What's going on, people? What's going on? This is an episode of Unfabricated. I know y'all used to pleasant assholes, but this is unfabricated. That's just probably going to be me giving my thoughts. Not that I'm that important, because I know that I'm not. However, I know that I do have some thoughts. I do have some thoughts that I think are relevant. I think that they can help people. And I think that some people are scared to talk about the things that I'm willing to talk about. And I mean that for real, not in a fake way, but in a real way. People can sometimes not know how to articulate what exactly goes on in their minds and hearts. And so we put it aside. And what exactly am I talking about? I'm going to talk about church culture. I'm going to talk about church culture. Just to give you a little background on myself, you see the name Holy Terrain there. That was actually my Christian rap name, right? So I used to be a Christian rapper. I had gotten saved in the year 2000. And it was a wonderful story. It is, not was. It is a wonderful story coming from where I came from. Very angry, very broken, very bitter, a lot of things. And I had a genuine encounter with the Lord. I had a genuine encounter with the Lord. Genuine. I met Jesus. What does that mean? What do I even mean by that? I'll never forget, and I'll give y'all a quick synopsis of my testimony. And I was on a youth retreat. My mother made me go. And the only reason she was able to make me go was because I had did bad in school. And so her deal to me was if I went, if I went to this church meeting, that I wouldn't have to be on punishment. No brainer, right? All right, cool. I'll go to this little church meeting. I'll put my headphones on and I'll tune everybody out. And for 2 days is good. And then I'm gonna come back and I won't have to, deal with no punishment. So that's what I did. And so at this youth meeting, I did notice that there was something different. The atmosphere was different. Everything was different. All right, whatever, it's cool. But then to make a long story short, I was laying in my bunk beds in this room, and one of the leaders at this youth retreat just started talking to me. Just started talking to me, not preaching at me, but I had questions. If you haven't noticed, I have lots of questions. I'm a guy who's going to question everything. And so I had some questions because I needed to understand what it is that I had just experienced. And I don't remember what he said. I don't remember what he said. But here's what I do remember. I laid in that bed that night and I said, Lord, God, if you're up there and you're real, I want some of what they got. People seemed happy. People seemed happy. There seemed to be a freedom in the atmosphere that I didn't experience. And so I wanted to experience that. And here's what I'll say to try to make it make sense to people who might not understand where exactly I'm coming from. When I did that, I said, God, if you're there, if you're real, I wanna experience some of what these people are experiencing. There was no divine thing that happened. There was no big light. There was no voice. There was no audible voice. There was no physical touch. There was nothing dramatic that happened. But I had made a commitment that I was going to give this thing Christianity a try. I was I was around 18 years old, something like that. And here's what I'll say: my life was never the same. My life was never the same. From that moment on, my life was never the same. But I did things the way that I thought they had to be done because I had been to church before. You know what I mean? And it was a thing that you did. You go to church. So now that I'm a Christian, that's what you do. You got to go to church. And they say, come as you are. And in this particular church, at least in the beginning, you didn't have to have, a suit on, which was a big deal for me. I wasn't wearing no damn suit. And so when I found out that I could just go to church and not have to wear a suit, I was like, that's pretty interesting. And so I gave myself over to it. I gave myself completely over to this place. I gave myself over to the Lord completely, full out. And what I was taught was that if I gave myself over to the Lord completely, to take that to the next step and to give myself over to a ministry completely. And so that's what I did. And I'm going to fast forward a long time. But I was totally committed to the cause, what I thought was the cause, which was people. The notion that people like me, who are insignificant, who had no value, actually have some type of value and significance, really spoke loud to me. Really spoke loud to me because my value system, when you come from where I come from, was all screwed up. All screwed up. I had no value in myself. And so when somebody came and said, hey, you have value, that was something that spoke directly to my core. And so time goes by, and me and my pastor become, really cool. And they start to see things in me. I meet up with a young guy, and he sees I love the I used to love the rhyme. I wasn't that good, but I loved to do it. And he thought that I was good enough to be in a group. So I joined this Christian rap group, and I started to study the Bible, like really study it front to back. I've read it a few times over, and off launched this Christian journey. And this journey was very interesting, and I'll explain. I was on stage in front of lots and lots and lots of people. We've done stadiums. I've been halfway around the world preaching the gospel. And I've experienced a lot and seen a lot. But if I'm honest, and that's what I'm here to be, let me backtrack. I even was preaching the word. I was preaching the word of God. But if I'm honest, there were a lot of things that didn't sit right with me. A lot, and it wasn't about what people did and didn't do, because that's where people's minds usually go. Christians are hypocrites. Christians do this wrong. Christians do that wrong. It wasn't about that. It wasn't about, this guy is having sex. This guy is smoking cigarettes. That person's doing this. It wasn't about that morality issue. There was something that didn't sit right about me, about the setup of it all. And I'll explain it this way. After I got into the building, after they indoctrinated me, after I was indoctrinated, I'll never forget this conversation. I was wearing a do-rag, and somebody was like, why are you wearing a do-rag? I was like, what do you mean why I wear a do-rag? I've always wanted a do-rag. It's what I did. I had waves. I liked my waves. It was part of my culture. It was a part of my culture. It wasn't nothing. I wore a do-rag. And the person was like, you're on stage and, you're rapping and you're preaching and doing all these things. And he explained the Levitical priests and how Levitical priests would dress differently from the crowd. And they had to set themselves apart. And in setting themselves apart, it was a part of what they wore. And they had to wear different garments. And so he was like, so eloquently, you should probably start thinking about wearing suits and drop the do-rag. And I had on a jail suit at the time. It was a Jabot jail suit. I don't know if y'all remember Jabot. That was my ish. I'm not going to curse on this podcast. I usually curse. I don't care. But I had on this Jabot jail suit and my do-rag. He was like, you look like a thug. And there it was. This was like maybe 3-4 years in. And I was like, I thought that the scripture was to come as you are. Yeah, come as you are. Then the Holy Spirit works in you. Catch. There's the catch. And I'm like, what does the Holy Spirit working in me have to do with a do-rag on my head? Oh, people might perceive it. Anyway, he tried to massage his way of telling me I needed to change my culture. And then from the pulpit, there was this notion of dropping your culture to become a Christian. You're not Black, you're a Christian. You're not Spanish, you're a Christian. You're not white, you're a Christian. Didn't feel right because I got to live in my skin. And a lot of my culture that I understand gets attacked from this pulpit sometimes. They like to use the rap to draw in people, but then rap culture was heavily attacked and scrutinized. I bought into it. I dropped my culture. And with dropping my culture, I also dropped a lot of friends. I dropped a lot of family. And this is something that's trained and taught within this realm. That if you want to be a Christian, you got to leave people behind. You got to shed the dead weight. You can't be a Christian and hang out with the same people. And it's this training to pull you out of the world, right? Pull you out of the world. We're supposed to be separate. We're supposed to be holy. So I bought in. And like I said, something didn't feel right. There were a lot of racial jokes that I was just, and this is to my shame, this is something that I'm very ashamed of. But there were a lot of racial jokes. And my nickname was Black Chris. And there was jokes like when I would walk in the room, oh, somebody turn on the light so that you can see Chris because it's too dark in here. Yo, Black Chris, smile so that we can see your teeth and know where you are. Ha, 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 ha. I didn't like it. But I was trying to fit in. I didn't know nothing about this Christian world. I'm just trying to, find my place, get in where you fit in, right? So I would laugh uncomfortably. But realistically, it's like, yo, something's not right here. Something's not right. And even my pastors, this wasn't just regular people. My pastors would make racial jokes. And if there was somebody who felt uncomfortable, who also looked like me, it would be like, oh no, we joke like this all the time. Don't worry. Chris is one of the good ones. And I say all this to my shame because something didn't feel right. Here's what else happened, because some of y'all will dismiss this as just church hurt. Oh, he got church hurt. People are imperfect. So you can't dismiss everything just because people are people. I started to, like I said, when in the rap group, we were going to lots and lots of different churches, lots of different places. And this became a common theme. It became a common theme that there was something wrong. There was something that just did not sit right with me. And I'll never forget, man. We went, one of the things in my church was, not only can't you curse, you can't even say a substitute. So if I say, get the fudge out of here, that would be like, oh no, brother, you can't do that because that's a substitute. And what substitute means is that you actually cursed in your heart. So even that's wrong. Pastor told me it. So pastor told me it must be true, right? So I bought in. All right, fine. So we're not supposed to even have a substitute for a curse. And so I bought into that. That was cool. I'm not going to curse. I'm not even going to substitute it. But then I went and we started ministering with this certain individual, a very, very big evangelist, probably the biggest evangelist in our time now. And he was riding by the building that he just finished preaching in. And he said, those people, they took my money, those motherphobians. I'm like, oh, wait, brother, we're not supposed to do that. That's substitution. We're not supposed to, even substitute the curse. I told him, I regurgitated exactly what I was told. And then my pastor pulls me aside. He's like, you shouldn't do that. And I'm like, wait a second, what you mean? He's like, you shouldn't do that. I'm like, I don't understand. He said, you corrected this guy, this evangelist. And I'm like, aren't we supposed to do that? And he said, no, because he's a man of God. He's God's anointed. And you're not supposed to touch God's anointed. And I'm like, I don't understand what that means. But again, comes from pastor, so I'll accept it. But it felt wrong. It felt wrong. Because if God is no respecter of man, why is he getting more respect than me? Why is it okay in God's eyes for him to say motherphobian, but I can't say motherphobian? Are there levels? In God's eyes, is he Christian level 50 and I'm Christian level 14? Is that a thing? Didn't feel right. Make a long story short, I'm going to fast forward. I get married. And I'm promised You know what? Let me backtrack a little bit. I'm doing everything by the T. I'm not having sex. I'm not cursing. I'm not doing anything that I'm told is going to hinder the Holy Spirit, right? And so, as a Christian rapper, there's groupies. I'm not gonna lie about it. Girls were throwing themselves at me, and I'm deflecting. At that time, I'm on the cuff. I am not engaging in any of it, and I'm given this promise. Once you get married, it makes it all worth it. Save yourself. You get married, things are gonna be worth it. Y'all promise you things are gonna be worth it. And so there was also this dating culture, and the dating culture was extremely strict. Extremely strict. I'm not going to go into all the rules, but a lot of y'all know what I'm talking about. And I adhered to even those strict dating culture rules. So I eventually met my ex-wife, and we both, kept to it. And to make a long story short, I'm not going to expose everything, but I get married and things aren't what I felt were promised. To make a long story short, things weren't what I felt were promised. I don't feel like the reward was worth all of the heartache and turmoil and discipline and all of this stuff that I did. I don't feel like I got back the reward of what I was promised I was going to get. And so, again, didn't feel right. Something was wrong. I knew this. There was nothing wrong with the Lord. I didn't believe at all that this was a God issue. This didn't become oh God, you lied to me. But something felt off. Something felt off, apart from God. So then some time goes by, and I'm now very close to the pastor. I'm very close to the higher ups, I guess, if you want to put it that way. And I start to get really involved in a lot of the decision makings, and I see decisions get made, and I see how decisions get made. And it's not just this particular church, but every church. You know what? Let me backtrack. Most churches, not every. Most churches I encounter have this same system that they adhere to when it comes to church business. And my pastor sat me down one time and he said, Christian, you have all the giftings, but what you lack is the business acclimate of it all. And in my mind, I was like, what do I need to know about business for? And some of y'all are even sitting there right now talking about, oh, well, you need to know business because church is a business. This is the point that I'm getting at. And he was like, church is a business, and you got to understand how business is run. And in my mind, I'm like, it's supposed to be just about people. Show me at one point in the Bible, does God ever care about a business? Ever, once. Yes, God is an organized God. Organization is one thing, but business, having to do with money, having to do with, all of that, I don't understand why that's pertinent. In fact, I think that's the problem. But pastor told me it, so, one of those things that you dismiss, and we all have a way of Christianizing things to make them sound right. You can use the Bible to pretty much prove whatever point you want to prove. And I accepted, what he said. All right, I need to understand business better, but something didn't sit right. And we had a meeting one time. It was a bunch of us, a bunch of figureheads. And the meeting, let me backtrack a little bit. The church used to be very focused on evangelism. It was very focused on getting the word out, bringing it outside the walls, right? Meeting the people where they are. Not even interested in getting them back into the building. Meet them where they are, get them saved, and they can go to whatever church they want. The heart was right. And I was all on board for that. And then we had this meeting. And in this meeting, the pastor was talking about expanding and what expanding would look like. And putting less of an emphasis on the street meetings, and more of an emphasis on getting people in the building, filling the building up, and becoming famous in the Christian world, becoming Christian famous. Our communities would transform. There were people standing outside waiting to get into church. The community was heavily impacted. We were going out. But then there was a cosmic shift. And the shift became to get people in the building. The building became the focus. Getting new lights, getting all the glitz, getting new soundboards, getting all new microphones, getting new pulpits, making it look pretty, making all of this stuff happen that, guess what, costs money. And it was presented as God wants excellence, and comparing it to the temple and how it was beautiful and all of this stuff and stuff that it was in the Bible. Yeah, it was there. So it was justified. But something didn't feel right because we stopped going out and we stopped hitting corners. And we used to do these things called hit and runs. And we stopped doing it. We would hop out. We had a speaker and a van. And we would hop out when we saw a bunch of people, do a quick 2-song concert, hit them with the word of God. People would get saved. We'd give them a flyer and we'd leave. And this was effective more than what you know. But we stopped doing it. And in this meeting was the place where we stopped doing it. It was decided. It was a decision to be made. Are we going to keep doing these hit and runs because it costs finances? Or are we going to start reallocating the finances to make us more church famous, make us more famous around the world? If we're famous, we have more influence. And if we have more influence, we can reach more people. People can get saved. And that's how it was presented. And for the majority of the people, it drives me crazy if this is not straight. The majority of the people bought in and was like, yes, we need to do it. But there were a few of us, about 2 of us in the room, who sat there and said, isn't it about the people? Isn't it supposed to fully be about the people? Not like, 75% about the people and, the other, 25% is business. It's supposed to always be about the people. So what are we talking about? Why are we filling the church with church people? We're supposed to fill the church with hurt people, broken people, people who doesn't know him. But there was a change. Didn't feel right. Now, I was also volunteering. Church was my second job. I was putting in workman's hours. And something didn't really click well with me when I would hear the verse, his burden is light and his yoke is easy. His burden is light and his yoke is easy. And deep down inside, I would think to myself, that's a lie. There is nothing light and easy about being a Christian. And some of y'all would really agree with me. Now, you might not admit it to yourself. You might not admit it to anybody else. And when you lay your head on that pillow at night, that verse just feels like a straight up lie. Nothing light and nothing easy about being a Christian, the way that was presented to me. And let me explain that. The way it was presented to me was you have to restrain from everything. Kill your flesh, die to your flesh every day. And your flesh wants to do these things. And your flesh wants to listen to rap music. Your flesh wants to watch bad TV shows. Your flesh wants to curse. Your flesh wants to smoke cigarettes. Your flesh wants to drink alcohol. Your flesh wants to... And it was this whole list of things that were bad. I'll never forget, man. One of my friends his father was a pastor, and me and him were very heavily involved. And like I said, we bought into everything that was told to us. And his dad used to smoke cigarettes, but he was a pastor. And we looked so down on his Christianity because of the fact that he smoked cigarettes. How dare you preach from the pulpit and yet you smoke cigarettes, dirty, nasty cigarettes? That's sin. totally dismissed his whole Christianity. But deep down inside, if I'm honest, didn't feel right. And here's what I'm getting at. There was a culture that was very subtly imposed upon my life. There was a very subtle culture, and it didn't have to do with God. It's presented that way. It was presented in a way of, if you want to honor God, this is what you need to do. And it's very sneakily a culture thing. Because very sneakily, love of country becomes important. Very sneakily, who you affiliate with politically becomes important. Very sneakily, what you grew up with, what I grew up with, the ghetto and the hood, is now deemed as evil. But the culture that is accepted by America, now that's okay. Didn't sit right. Let me explain something. This is not me bashing my church, and I'm not even going to give you the name of the church. This is not me bashing people. This is not me here talking about Christians are such hypocrites and they don't do things right. This is about a system. This is about a system that's bought into, a system that's taught, a system that's preached, and most of them don't even know they're doing it. It's not evil. It's not diabolical. There's not a group of pastors who sit around and say to themselves, how can we screw over the church today? How can we gain power and make money? And who cares about everybody else? That's not what's happening. It's not what's happening. These pastors believe what they're being pushed also. We all do. At least I used to. And then something started to happen in my life. Everything that I knew to be was stripped away from me. You know what? I'm not going to play the victim. Nope, it was not stripped away from me. Some of it I exploded, and some of it was stripped away from me. I fell in my marriage, had an affair, and when that happened, I recognized who my real friends were. People started to, fall away from me. That's fine. I understand. I used to do the same thing. And I used to tell people to do the same thing. So I knew exactly what was happening and I accepted it. But something didn't feel right. I didn't feel free. I never felt free. You know when I felt most free? The first year of my Christianity. After that, when I was starting to get indoctrinated, I didn't feel free at all. I'm honest. I didn't feel free at all. I knew that was the right thing to say. I'm free. Yeah. And in the moment, the emotions feel free when you're in church. So I'd be in church and I'd feel free for that moment because you're surrounded by people who feel the same way. But when I would leave, I didn't feel free at all. I felt shackled. And in my falling, I had to punish myself. And this was me doing it to myself because of what I'd done to other people. I was telling people how to be a good Christian from what I was taught. And so this is what I know. So I felt like I needed to punish myself because how could you, Christian? You preach the gospel. How could you fall? But something didn't feel right. Because the Bible says that God's mercy and grace goes way beyond our comprehension. So why is the grace and mercy shackled to my comprehension of what mercy is supposed to be? Something didn't feel right. I did wrong. And so in me doing wrong, I got to be punished. So I'm going to punish myself. And that's what I did. Honestly, I didn't stop punishing myself until maybe about a year ago. So I started to fall away. It got too much. I was like, you know what? I can't bear the weight of going back to this church anymore. Not to say they did anything wrong, because it wasn't about that. I just couldn't bear the weight of the eyes and the, I guess pity, the Christian pity. We have this Christian pity. Oh man, he fell. Some of y'all felt it with what's the dude from Hillsongs, Lentz or whatever. Oh man, he fell. Oh gosh, and you got this Christian pity. Oh, God needs to heal us, man. He was a pastor and he fell. And I'm going to address that. So I found myself in that place where I was on the receiving end of the Christian pity. And I needed to get away from it. My ex-wife started to notice that my behavior started to change. I didn't go to church every day no more. I would go 3-4 times a week to church, not just twice. And when I would go, I would show up early and I would leave late. Started to wean. Stopped going as much. And in my head, that means that I'm backslidden. It's this big word that's only mentioned once in the Bible, but sometimes we can exaggerate things. Big word, backslidden. And we would spend hours praying for quote unquote backslidden people. And so I started to not go as much. Started to not go to church as much. And I'm just giving y'all the full story so that y'all don't think that I'm just trying to make myself look good, because that's not what I'm doing. And I'm not playing the victim either. I started to cut away a lot of the things a lot of the practices that I used to do. And then I know that there's probably some people saying now, you had religion, you didn't have relationship. I know that verse. It's not even a verse, but I know that training. The problem is that you trusted in man, you trusted in people, and you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to trust in the Lord, and that's all right. It's true. Here's the problem, is that that's only true to an extent, because then after a while you're told this is your pastor and he hears from God, so you're supposed to follow him. So it becomes always about the pastor. It always becomes about the pastor. They'll push it to you as it's not about a man, it's about the Lord. But the minute you cross somebody in a high, Ma, can you close that door? The moment that you cross somebody in a high place, it very quickly doesn't become about anything else but that man and who you disrespected. I.e. the story I told you about the evangelist. And so I started to cut that away, because this man, let me backtrack a little bit. When I fell, I had a pastor that I really, really respected, and many people know, and many people respect. And he's a respectable man. I don't fault him. This is not to say there's something wrong with him. This is not to say that anything he's ever done is null and void, because some of y'all know who I'm talking about. But when I fell, my ex-wife is a close family member to this pastor. And I'll never forget this. He told me I'm going to hell. He said, I don't even think you're saved. He had a moment that he was emotional. Please don't think about him any differently. Please don't. He's a man of God. And I'm going a place with this. But this is a man that I admired. This is a man who I tried to emulate as much as I could. And I did a bad thing. He didn't say it out of nowhere. I did a bad thing, what would be considered bad. And he told me, I don't even believe you're saved. I don't believe you're saved at all. I believe it was all a lie. I'm lucky because I read my Bible. And I'm lucky because I had a relationship with the Lord. And that moment didn't break that. I was hurt and I was heartbroken. But I was so confused. But at the same time, I knew that he was speaking. He was speaking not from the Lord. That wasn't God talking to me. That was this man talking to me. This man who I had up on a pedestal. And at that moment, I had to take that pedestal down. I had to take the pedestal down. This left me lost. Not lost in who God is. And this is the point that I'm getting to. Not lost in who God is, because even though I was labeled as backslidden and am labeled as backslidden, I never felt backslidden. I felt flawed. I felt like I needed to do some work on myself. I felt like I needed to understand self better. I needed to understand Christian better because I got lost in a culture that told me who I was. I didn't know who I was, which was a part of the issue. Is that a part of this church culture has you strip everything about yourself away and pick up a culture that's not rooted in Bible, but rooted in a lot of nationalism. And that's what I did. And so I had to start reflecting on myself. But here's the thing. I didn't feel like God was far. I was taught that where there was sin, I started cursing again. You understand what I'm saying? I started watching bad movies, watching pornography and all the bad things you're not supposed to do. And I'll be honest, God didn't feel far at all. God didn't feel far at all. The Spirit didn't feel far at all. My beliefs in who God is didn't change one bit. You know what did change? My morality. I'm not gonna, not gonna sugarcoat. I'm gonna lose some people right now, and that's fine because I need to talk about it. But all the morals that I had held tight to, I dropped. And then I noticed how people who said that they love me, I love you, brother, I love you always. Once I stopped going to church, that changed. Not everybody. There are a few brothers who I still have to this day that I call brother. But the vast majority, I thought that I had a lot of friends, and I didn't. My true friends know who they are. But I noticed that I was shed away, like a cancer, like this STD. You know what I'm saying? People stopped talking to me, and people stopped reaching out, and I'm talking about people who I considered friends, people who I slept in their home, people who we cried together, we prayed together, we spent all this time together, stuff they know about me that nobody else knows. I know stuff about them that nobody else knows. And once I started to shed away from what they see as the things of God, our whole dynamic changed and they stopped reaching out. And I was stripped of everything. I was stripped of everything. I blew some stuff up. Like I said, I exploded a lot of my life. And I also was stripped of a lot. Rightfully so. And so I came to a place where I had to start doing a lot of self-reflection. And it's funny, my mom, she still does this. She would always ask me, Christian, where are you? Like, what's going on inside? Where are you? And that question was always such a interesting question to ask because I knew what she thought. He's backslidden. He needs to come back to the things of God. But I never felt like that. I never felt like I needed to come back to the things of God. I never felt like the things of God ever really left me. And so I started to question God. Not question who he is, but rather than have a Christianese conversation where, you're supposed to pray a certain way, you're supposed to make your voice sound like this, you're supposed to dedicate this time and dedicate that time, and you're supposed to do devotions, and in that time, quiet. And there was this whole way that you had to do things in order for you to quote unquote do it right. I shed all that, and I just started to talk to myself. Within talking to myself, talking to God, and Christian, like, where are you? Like, your mother's right. Where are you? What are we doing here? And I'm not going to give you a big preaching of what happened, but I'm going to keep it real simple because here's the word that I got. Here's the word that I got. And I get that some of y'all are going to dismiss a lot of what I'm saying just because of my actions. And like I said, I'm not in church culture at all anymore. But here's what God said to me, and I'm just talking to me. I'm not even going to say to all of you guys, this is the way to go, follow this new theology, blah, 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 blah. Here's what God said to me. What is the most important commandment? Love your God, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And then Jesus goes further to say, treat your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Christian, that's all I care about. That's all I care about. How are you treating the people that I've created? Not just my people, not just quote unquote Christians, not just people who are lovable and easy to love. How are you treating the people around me? People around you, excuse me. Anybody within your reach, anybody within your church, how do you treat them? Because that's going to reflect me. And I'm like, yeah, but God, I can't go back to church. I just can't. I don't trust them. I don't. I don't trust them. I don't trust ministry. I don't trust the people. And God said, what's the most important commandment? Love the Lord thy God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. He left it at that, kept it simple. I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know what to do with that. It was pretty confusing to me. But then he brought another verse to memory. And that's what the Holy Spirit does, right? For those of you who understand that dynamic, the Holy Spirit brings to remembrance verses that you know, verses that you've read in the moment that you need them. And the Bible said to work out your own salvation. Let me be very clear what that doesn't mean. That doesn't mean that there's many ways. I don't believe that there's many ways to the Lord. I'm saying that I believe Jesus Christ died. I believe Jesus Christ rose. I believe everything else around that is to be up for question. Christian, you question the Bible? Yes. Uh-oh, I just lost a bunch of people. Christian, you question the Bible? Yes. Do I question its validity? No. Then I'm confused. What do I mean? But the slaves used to read an incomplete Bible. There was stuff that was taken out of it. My simple question is, how do we know we're not doing that today? With that being said, what is it then that I hold tight to? Love the Lord thy God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And my man brought this verse to remembrance to me, and it's that the law is sketched on our hearts. We know right from wrong. That's not something that you always need to be taught. A lot of times things feel right and they feel wrong. I am not sitting here saying that I got things figured out. I'm not sitting here coming to you saying, be like me. Anybody who's in church and loves their time there and loves their church, do that. Do that. But here's the important thing. To be anchored in who God is, not what people do. Whenever I see a pastor fall and I see the church react to it, oh man, God, he fell off, and then they, it's like I said, the whole Christian pity party. I'm like, you know what? We need to stop doing that. Because these pastors are men. And here's what I think the issue is. I think the issue is not sin. I think the issue is the system. I believe that sin and the notion of sin is a bit of a cop-out a lot of the times. It's a bit of a cop-out because Sin is something that can never be fixed. It was fixed by Jesus' death, period. But people will never stop sinning. So, for instance, with the whole shootings that have been happening, the church is saying, oh, the problem isn't guns, the problem is sin. And it's a cop-out because sin is never going to stop. But there are certain things that we could do. And I don't mean to make this a political issue, but I'm just going to say this and leave it here. There are certain things that you can do on a federal level to help stop some of it. So to blame it on sin and to keep it moving is a cop-out. So what am I saying? I think what I'm trying to say is I had came to a place, and here's where I am, just to give some clarification for maybe some people who might be wondering what happened to me. I've dropped church culture. I don't need to go to a building. In fact, I went to church today for the first time in years. And I'll tell this story. For the first time in years, I sat in church today. Just because I wanted to go and I needed to get some clarification for myself. And I wanted to see if it was really I'm a backslider and needed to come back to the Lord and stand at an altar or something. And I sat in that church service, and all the Spirit said to me was, this isn't for you. This isn't for you. This is not your place. This is not your place. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with the people who were there. The people who went should be there. And if you're getting something from it, salute. You know what I mean? Get something from it. I'm not one to throw babies out with bathwater. Meaning that just because some aspect of something is bad, I don't dismiss the whole thing. There are so many aspects of church that is wonderful, beautiful, and they do help a lot of people. But as many people as they help is as many people as they hurt. I'm going to say that again. As many people as they help is as many people as they hurt. And we give the church a pass too many times for the damage that is caused. Let me explain something to you. A pastor has the hearts and the minds. Do you understand how powerful that is? Do you understand the weight of controlling somebody's mind and heart? That's all we're made up of, people. All we're made up of is our heart and our mind. And this pastor has all that power, has complete, a lot of times, trust and control in these situations. And may I suggest that that is way too much power for one man to wield. As I said before, this is not some diabolical plan. Pastors are not sitting around wondering how to screw over the church and be evil. That's not what I'm saying. But the system that is in place, that is the American church, is broken. It's broken. It is hurting as many people as it helps. And just because you help people, you cannot dismiss the fact that you hurt people. There is this not new, but there is this phrase now called church trauma. And it's becoming a thing and it's catching fire. You want to know why? Because a lot of people, most people can relate to church trauma because you give your all, you give your everything to this place. So you don't care that, people aren't perfect. When you're hurt, that trust gets broken. That is a powerful, powerful thing. In fact, there's a verse in the Bible that says it's better for you to tie a rope around your neck, tie it to a rock, and jump into a river and drown yourself than it is for you to hurt one of God's people, one of God's children. And I'm paraphrasing that verse. God makes very clear how serious he is about hurting people. Why do I mention that? All this to say, churches are about people, but also about their buildings. That's what the pastor meant when he sat me down and said, you need to understand church business. It's more than just people. And he's right. Because if I have a building, I need to understand business. I need to understand business. If you have a building, now money gets involved. And so guess what? Sometimes the emphasis is not going to be on people. It's going to have to be on money because you got to keep the lights on. You got to pay bills. So, and we say things like, oh, God always provides. Yeah, but You can't just sit back and wait for a check to come. You got to go out and you got to earn. And so with that, capitalism starts to creep into the church. I started to notice. Like, man, it starts to become a lot about money. Not all. And they do good things. Church does great things. But we could do so much more if it wasn't about keeping these lights on, quote unquote. We bought into nationalism. We've bought into capitalism. We bought into Americaism. We bought into American culture. And then I started to do a little study on the history of the issues in America and where the church has stood on a lot of these major issues that have to do with marginalized people in this country. And the church is never on the right side of that history. When it comes to marginalized people, I'll give you an example. Right now, the big thing is individualism. You got to pull yourselves up by the bootstraps. Nobody's going to do nothing for you. Don't have a victim mentality. You need to do. You need to do for yourself. And the church has adopted this mentality rather than lifting the floor. What I mean by that is the person in society, the most marginalized people, if you raise them up, it raises everybody up. But if you raise them up, it's going to take help because they can't do it by themselves. And I come from this space. So I understand that everybody can't do it by themselves. Well, Christian, you did it. You got yourself off the hood. So why can't they? Because I was lucky. I was from the hood, but I had a support system who had a brain and who had morals and pulled me out. And everybody doesn't have that. And the church, a lot of the times, doesn't do enough to do anything meaningful that's going to change these people's lives. Christian, you're not being fair to the church. I'm not. I am very hard. I'm very hard on the church. I know some of y'all see it. I know some of y'all, it might annoy you. But here's the reason. Because we are who God's going to hold accountable at the end of the day. I think that the church has put on a jersey and we hold so tight to these jerseys. I'm a Christian. I'm wearing my Christian jersey today. And we've pushed everybody away. We've pushed them away. I think gay pride is coming up. And yeah, I can't stand when Christians start to post the whole, oh, rainbows are meant for God promises, not for gay people, blah, 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 blah. It's like, yo, who the fuck? I'm sorry. Who the hell are you influencing with these stupid ass posts that y'all make? Who are you influencing? If you want to be God's hand extended, don't be sitting here telling people, you know what I'm saying, how awful they are. Oh, Christian, you one of them weak Christians. You're supposed to be, sin is sin, and you're supposed to call it out when it's another Christian, yes. But when it comes to somebody who doesn't know anything about the Lord, no, it's not about that. That's not the Jesus that I serve. Do I need to give you an example? When they brought the adulterer before him, she committed adultery. She did it. She was guilty. Jesus, what should we do with this woman? Stone her. Stone her. Jesus ain't even bothered. Yo, not even bothered. Not even fret. Not even sweating. He's just sitting there on the floor. He's it says that he's drawing something in the sand. And they're like, Jesus, you hear us? This woman, she committed adultery. The law says that she needs to die, which it does say. The law said that she needed to die. Jesus stood up, said, he who has not sinned, you cast the first stone. And then he knelt back down. I love it. I love it. I love it. Not even bothered by sin. Not even bothered by it. God is not bothered by sin. We put weight on sin. If you believe that God is all powerful, all everything, why would he be bothered by something as much simple as a sin? But you know what does bother him? What bothers him is when we marginalize people. What bothers him is when we turn people off to him. And the church has turned the world off to God, not drawing them closer, because we're more focused on keeping our jerseys on. You know what I mean? I'm totally against the abortion movement. I don't care what anybody says. I am not for abortions, but I am against telling other people what they need to do. And I'm dismissed left and right because of it. And I'm like, because of an issue that's not even mentioned in the Bible, because i.e. abortion is not a thing in the Bible. They will point to the verse of murder, but the word abortion does not exist in the Bible. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Because of this issue, we've pushed so many people away. Do you know what it means for a woman to be so desperate that she wants to have an abortion? There's so many other issues going on in her life, but the church ain't focused on that. Church ain't focused on that. Church is focused on the jersey. We are evangelicals. We are Christians. And that's all they care about is their own team. And so I was sitting in that church and God said, this is not for you. This is not for you. I was looking like maybe I need to put the jersey back on. And God made it clear as day. No, this is not for you. I have a work for you. And it's outside these buildings. People are hurting. People are hurting. And my church is not doing enough to reach them. And you understand, and this is God talking to me. You understand the church and you understand the world. And my job is to not shun the world. My job is to not push the world away. My job is to not label them. My job is to not set myself apart from them. My job is to incorporate in the world and show them that there is a God who loves them despite where they are, despite if they ever stop doing whatever it is that they're doing. But that there is a God who loves them and that wants to live inside them and become their anchor. Because there is one promise in the Bible, there's not many of them. But in this world, you will have trouble. And we are in a troubled world. We are in a troubled world, and the church is not giving solutions. I'm sorry, saying to somebody who's not saved, hey, you want to be untroubled? Jesus is the answer. And then put up your little Christian posters and go march somewhere. That's doing absolutely it's doing nothing. It's doing nothing. And it's not doing nothing because the world is getting darker. The world's getting darker because the church isn't doing nothing. The church has on its jersey, sets itself apart, and stays apart. I had to apologize to a lot of people, a lot of my cousins. I dropped my family, and they loved me, and they missed me for a long time. But I totally shunned them because they were in sin, and I didn't want to be in sin either. And it's easier for somebody to pull you down than it is for you to pull somebody up. These are all things that we're trained to know. So I shed off my family who needed me. I shed my family who needed me for walls. I had to apologize. I had cut my friends out of my life. My best friends, two of my best friends of 25 years, I cut out of my life because I was told I wasn't supposed to be friends with them no more because they were going to pull me down. And to this day, they talk about that time frame where I wasn't around. And I had to apologize because I didn't have any influence or impact on their life when I wasn't there. When I would pop in, talk about Jesus and leave. No impact. But you know what does impact people? When you love them. Not when you love them in a sense where you just tell them Bible verses and invite them to church and this is me loving you. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about genuine love. I'm talking about interest. That's different. Interest. We as Christians, I'm not a Christian anymore, but Christians have become very it's very easy to love somebody from a distance. It's very easy to love somebody from a distance. Oh, I love them. It hurts my heart to watch them sin. So then go do something. So then go show them that love. So go show, and I'm not talking about preaching. I'm not even talking about giving money, because we're also good at that. We're good at giving money to pat ourselves on the back and make us feel like we did something right. I'm talking about genuine interest in their lives, which takes commitment, which takes selflessness. That's love. Love is when somebody doesn't love you back and you still love them. That's the type of love that I'm talking about. And that's the direction that God has pointed me. Simple. Simple. That's the direction that God has pointed me. I dropped the church culture. I dropped it. I did not drop Jesus. I did not drop who I am in the Lord. I did not drop who God is. But the culture, everything else, honestly, I question. And I'm open to being wrong about it. You know what I mean? Listen, it's all right to be wrong. I'm open to being wrong about it. But you know what I do know? Here's what I do know. Is God has charged me. God has given me gifts. God has pointed me in a direction to genuinely serve and help people. However that looks. That doesn't mean to me going out on, getting a microphone and preaching on the corner. Doesn't always mean, I'm saying, going to food pantries and volunteering all my time there. But it's a being every moment conscious of how I treat people. Because we're real good at loving ourselves, ain't we? We're really good at loving ourselves, and God knows it. That's why he said, you know what you do? Love others the same way. Love others the same way. I'm sorry that this comes across a little preachy. I know it does, and that's fine. But I needed, I think, to clarify, because a lot of my posts sometimes are very pointed. But I want you to understand that they're never pointed at an individual. And I understand that some people get offended, and that's fine. I really don't care. But it's never intended to offend or attack a person, because our battle is not in flesh and blood. But there is a system that the church has bought into. Nationalism, Americanism, selfism. The church has bought into a lot of it. And that's what I attack. That's what I attack. When a church can be extremely loud for 50 years and get an abortion Roe v. Wade rule overturned, that means that you have influence and that you have power. And there are a lot of other issues that God made clear he had issue with. Abortion is an issue that's argued because it's not clear. But poverty, taking care of the widow, taking care of the marginalized, over 2,000 times these things are mentioned in the Bible. Directly. Nothing has to be argued about it. So why are we not as loud for these particular issues as we are about gay marriage and abortion? Why? Why are we attacking people? There is a system that needs to be broken down. There is a system that needs to be questioned and challenged. And if I got to be the one to do it, I'm going to do it. And I know I'm not alone. That's the funny thing, is I know I'm not alone. There are a lot of people who, I'm a clown, whatever. That's fine. That's what's going to happen. But the fact of the matter is, I know my charge. I know what I've been charged to do. I know what being God's hand extended really means. When people speak of Christian, all I want them to say is, that dude loved me. That dude cared about me. That's not easy for me. I'll be honest. I'm very indifferent when it comes to people. My natural state of being, I can sit in a room by myself for the rest of my life and be fine. I don't need to talk. Me and my mom are doing this challenge on Tuesday where we're not going to talk for 24 hours. I told my mother, that's not a challenge for me. That's actually kind of a relief. I'm very indifferent when it comes to people, naturally. But who I am in the Lord and who God is all about people. And he's given me gifts to reach people, to influence people. And so guess what? I don't understand. I don't know anything else. I curse, I sin, I do a whole bunch of things that you're not supposed to do in church. But I know this. I know this. I'm going to give as much as I can to somebody else. I'm going to give, and when I have nothing, give some more so that somebody else can be okay. Why? Because that's the charge that I have on my life, to give it. I can't run from that. I can't run from that. And I won't run from that. If you want to dismiss all of that because of some of the things that I said about the Bible, some of the things I said about the church culture, that's fine. But some of y'all, there's some people out there who really understand what I'm saying, and maybe you're in a place where you've been hurt deeply by the church. And some people might try to dismiss that. Oh, you need to just go back. No, work out. I encourage you, work out your salvation. Work out your salvation. Don't let it go because of what somebody else did. Because it's bigger than that. That I know. Salvation is bigger than what you do and don't do. What somebody did and didn't do. So for those of us who have that church trauma, and y'all know who you are, y'all know who I'm talking to, it's okay not to go back to church. I'm sorry, I'll say it. But you need to know who you are in the Lord, because you need to have a confidence in who he is. And that's what it's all about. That's all I'm going to leave you with. Jesus, what's the most important commandment? Here I give you a new one. He dismissed the whole what they were talking about. He said, here I give you a new one. Love the Lord thy God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. Signing out. Have a good night, y'all.